And then there was another one. This is another Fox one. This is one of the things, like, they're just giving me these mystery clips. New York Times finally acknowledges primary cause of staggering migrant numbers. Biggest story of the Biden administration. Fox and Friends co-hosts weigh in. Let's see what it is. The primary cause. Let's hear it.
Look at this. All new reporting this hour. As we learn the surge of migrants under the Biden administration.
Yeah, I can barely see the wall for all the people. It's like a herd. Dear God.
Is the largest in U.S. history, 60% of which are illegal.
Griff Jenkins joins us with...
Wait a minute. 60% of the people sneaking across the southern border are illegal? Why are 40% of the people coming across the border sneaking?
A look at the staggering numbers. Griff, what do you know?
Yeah, well, good morning. And Lawrence, this comes as probably no surprise to the entire nation who have watched before their own eyes the past 4 years of the border crisis. Fox has covered it.
Yeah, I know you guys play the same shit on a loop. Get to the actual numbers.
On the ground and from our drones, and you have seen it. And now the New York Times is crunching government data, realizing that...
Is this slowed down? Are you drunk?
This border crisis
Now it's no time to think of my number.
Down in the history books as the biggest story of the Biden administration. The Times took a deep dive into that government data and found the surge is the largest in U.S. history, surpassing the great immigration boom of the late 1800s. They say annual
when we kept really good numbers.
Net migration, the number of people coming to the country minus the number leaving, averaged 2.4 million people from 2021 to 2023.
Average annual net migration between the estimated total number of migrants under Biden. That means, okay, I see. So from the Congressional Budget Office. Who thinks we're going to unpack this thing and it's going to be encounters?
According to the Congressional Budget Office. And they found that the total net migration during the Biden administration is likely to exceed 8 million people. In the article, they write this: that's a faster pace of arrivals than during any other period on record, including the peak years of Ellis Island travel.
Recent immigration surge has been the largest in history. Okay, hold on. So, hey, I got to check this out. You want to check this out? Okay, so, New York Times. Oops. I can type. New York Times, recent immigration surge. Okay, that should give us the article, I think. Recent immigration surge has been largest in U.S. history. Under President Biden, more than 2 million immigrants per year have entered. But have they stayed? Government data shows. The immigration surge of the past few years has been the largest in U.S. history, surpassing annual net migration. The number of people coming into the country minus the number leaving, average 2.4 people from 2021 to 2023. We don't actually track people who are automatically kicked out, deportations versus that, whatever, during Title 42 anyways. According to the Congressional Budget Office, total net migration during the Biden administration is likely to exceed. Okay, that's a faster pace of arrivals than during other period. Historic boom in immigration. Okay, the numbers in the Times analysis include both legal and illegal immigration. So about 60% of immigrants who have entered the country since 2021 have done so without legal authorization, according to Goldman Sachs report based on government data. The combined increase of legal and illegal immigration has caused the share of U.S. population born in another country to reach a new high, 15% in 2023, up from 13 in 2020. Previous high was 14.8 in 1890. All right. New high for U.S. foreign-born population. Cause and effect, several factors that are welcoming immigration, offended by harsh policies, including where a nation says if you want to flee, you're fleeing oppression, you should come. After taking office, administration loosened the rules on asylum, immigration policies, blah, blah, blah. Outside causes have also played Haiti, Ukraine, Venezuela, desperate people, blah, blah, blah. After a crackdown, fewer arrests, encounters. with U.S. Border Patrol along the southwest border. Encounters. Scale of recent immigration helps explain why the issue has played a central role. Mayors and governors, both Democrat and Republican, have complained about the strain on local government. Chicago, elsewhere, some of the biggest effects have occurred in South Texas. And again, broom them the fuck out. Get ready, Texas. You're about to have the circulatory system of your entire economy in Texas torn out by the roots. 8 years ago, he won. Elsewhere, Democrats managed to outpace, including Arizona. Okay, voters expressed particular frustration, don't care, including Mr. Trump, spread falsehoods about recent immigrants claiming they cause a crime wave. In truth, they haven't. Okay, similarly, the immigrants of recent decades who have come primarily from Asia and Latin America are climbing the economic ladder and assimilating into American society. By the way, that's the point I made this morning, that the idea about caravans coming is a bunch of bullshit. That the vast majority of the people who are making it here now, both legally and illegally, are the ones who can afford to make the trip and fly as close to the border as they can, or try over, or can pay coyotes multiple times for their entire family. They can pay for 4 people instead of just coming here by themselves. So you bring the whole family with you and they can afford it. So of course they're assimilating and climbing the economic ladder. They already have businesses here in some cases. So whatever. Okay. High levels of immigration do have downsides. We're talking about, okay, describe the recent increase as something that we really haven't seen in recent memory. How cool wage growth, census undercount, even with all the political attention on immigration, the precise size of the surge has been unclear because of the different ways the federal government collects data. When looking at this distant past, researchers rely on a once-a-decade census. But over the short term, and especially during periods of change, the Census Bureau can underestimate the size of immigrant population. Outside researchers say, for one thing, some immigrants, especially those without legal status, are likely to avoid replying to surveys. Really? And the census uses a statistical technique that assumes the country's population is not changing rapidly from year to year. For reasons researchers have more faith in recent data collected by the Congressional Budget Office. It combines surveys with administrative data on border crossings, asylum applications, and other immigration records to estimate net migration. Private firms have conducted their own similar conclusion as the CBO. Jerome Powell have read recent immigration were likely not fully reflected in census numbers, blah, blah, blah. Annual service. Okay, the future. What happens next is clear. During this, 57% of voters, blah, blah, blah. But the logistics of finding, apprehending, deporting millions of people would not be simple. Public support for the policy could decline if swept up immigrants. I don't care. As a point of comparison, the Trump administration deported about 300,000 people a year, and the Obama administration deported almost 400,000 per year. Whatever the number in a second term, the recent immigration surge has probably ended. Mr. Biden's crackdown since the summer, and also Title 42, the end of the... recent thing, more on the data. The Times analysis of recent immigration relied on census data until 2019 and a combination of census and CBO data since 2020. We work with experts in the government and elsewhere to pair the two data sets. The census data is based on surveys. The CBO data is based on both surveys and administrative records from immigration courts, border officials, and other government agencies. Data from 1850 to 2000 comes from the decennial census every 10 years. From 2010 to 2019, American Community Survey, and from 2020 to 2023, it comes from the ACS and the CBO. Outside experts, including those at the Federal Reserve, consider the CBO's recent estimates to be more accurate. Some experts do think the CBO estimate of 2.4 million is too high because it relies on administrative data that may miss some immigrants who return to their countries. You don't say. Other estimates are somewhat lower than those from the CBO. Goldman Sachs, for example, estimates annual net migration to be just about 2 million from 2021 to 2023. Recent immigration surge has been so large that central conclusions for our analysis remain even if the Goldman Sachs estimate is more accurate, blah, blah, blah. And in another way, our analysis understates the immigration surge because the analysis ends in July 2023. Immigration remained high for about 12 months. Then July of this year, foreign born share, 15.5. Runs the morning, Times flagship daily, okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I need to see the CBO data. Here we go. The demographic outlook. Demographic factors that contribute to population growth. And this is the net migration number, which is what leveled out population from, that will level out. I guess the idea is level out in. So this is the spike I see. Population growth was 0.3%. Net migration was 0.2%. Births minus deaths, 0. Okay. Population growth is this black line, up and then down. overall, it's gone down. So I guess these people are leaving, or they're going to leave. Is the idea that this is what happens if you kick them out, or that we're going to decline so much? And also, this is there's 2020. This is when Trump was in office, and it started to go up. It ditched down like this. The last number is 2005, relatively close. This is projected at this point, I guess. 2024 population growth 1.2%, net migration 1%, births minus deaths 0.2%. Net migration is this green one. That's the people, coming versus people leaving. CBO's projection, Social Security area population, relevant population for estimating Social Security payroll taxes and benefits, and the measure of population used in this report increases from 342 million people in 2024 to 383 million people in 2054. As growth of the population age 65 or older outpaces growth of younger age groups, the population continues to become older on average. The civilian non-institutional population changes since last year. Social Security area population is projected to be larger. Effects of the immigration surge on the federal budget and economy. I think this would be the closer one. Number of people entering the states has increased sharply in recent years. Most of the increase comes from a surge in people whom the Congressional Budget Office categorizes as other foreign nationals. Some of them have received permission to enter or remain in the country. Some have not. More detail on the composition of the immigrants in the categories provided below on the basis of pre-2020 trends. Data, underlying figures, and tables. I would guess this is it. There we go. Look at this. Now we're talking. Estimated effects of migration, surge on deficits, effects on revenues, mandatory budgetary effects, net immigration, other foreign nationals on CBO's baseline, and counterfactual. Whoops. Yeah, here you go. This is where they made the other one. Scroll over here, you jerk. The net immigration of other foreign nationals over 2021-2026 period is 8.7 million people greater in CBO's baseline projections. That is under the counterfactual scenario in which net immigration of people in that category equals 200,000 people annually. Data source, Congressional Budget Office. Gee, who runs the Congress right now? It's weird. This is all we're going to get? The same graphic? You jerks. CBO's baseline. It's weird that the CBO's baseline peaks out in the last year of Biden and then immediately assumes a massive drop. It's almost as if the Congress is on Trump's side and they're the ones who put this together. It doesn't seem weird to anybody that the projection for the first year of Trump is almost half of, or like 2/3 of what Biden's last year in office is, and then 2026 is 90, and then from 27 onward, it's 0.20. Like, we're going to get this figured out. This is the Congressional Budget Office. Do you think there's a thumb on the scale? Just saying. I'm going to go with yes. So, anyways, we looked into their baseline.
When millions of Europeans came to the United States. Now, their analysis did, as you mentioned, Brian, include both legal and illegal immigration, and found 60% of immigrants who have entered the country since 2021 have done so without legal authorization. All of this comes as President-elect Trump is set to hit the ground with a
Which, by the way, hold on one second. That would mean, if math serves, hold on. So if we're saying, let's take their number as full, like 8 million people, that if there were 10 million illegal immigrants in the country in total, 10.3, I think is the number we were talking about, or 11 when Trump came in, and that number went down, and now it's we've added these people. Let's just say the aggregate of illegal immigrants is added to it. That means the absolute total at this point would be 14.3 million people. if you don't count legal immigration at all. You're just counting the undocumented or illegal population in the country, and even in that, you're like they're counting. I mean, I don't know what the standard in the Congressional Budget Office under Republicans is as far as legal status of asylum seekers. If they're just going to assume that people that were given temporary protected status by the Biden administration, they keep calling them illegal, right? So I don't know which category they fall into, legal or illegal in these numbers. But let's just go with they're illegal. Let's max it. That means that the number of illegal and undocumented people that have come into the country without the right to do so legally, or even that have been given temporary status or asylum status for a little while, still only puts the max number at 50 million. It's nowhere near 20 million, and it doesn't count for any of the people that left or died or COVID or any of that other shit. And it also assumes, by the way, that they all stayed. And since it goes by, 2 plus, they say like 2 million a year for the Goldman Sachs numbers, which were conservative, that they're saying that weight's a little closer to reality for them. That means that, 60% of those, a little over, whatever, 1.2 million of those folks are here illegally. The rest of them are legal. So it shouldn't be part of the conversation at all. No, none of us give a fuck about people who've been given work visas or come here to go to school. That has never been the conversation. We're not going to stop that by shutting down the southern border. Does anybody think we're going to get, I don't know, 4 million of these, or 3.6 million people out, or that they should count in these numbers towards this overall number because they came here to go to college or university? Fuck, this is dumb.
Mandate on day one with a plan for mass
I love the net migration shit. Like, they don't.
deportations. After all, Trump says that after mass illegal immigration, you're going to need mass deportation. But one thing is for sure, finally, even the New York Times is putting it front and center that this crisis has led to unprecedented numbers. And they found also...
No, they haven't. And again, this is the... Hold on. Recent immigration... Okay. The surge has been the largest in history. More than 2 million immigrants per year have entered. And by the way, they notice it's, again, the net, and this is immigrants. This is not illegal immigrants. Again, we have legal immigration. I don't know what the fuck they're talking about as far as the end of this. And if you'll notice, they're talking about 2 million people a year, 60% of which they say are here illegally. And that includes asylum, TPS, DED, whatever stuff the Congressional Budget Office thinks that the Biden administration doesn't have the right to do these stuff. But they're showing this line. This is not, again, 3.8 million of the people they're talking about flew in through an airport, probably more than that, because, again, not all of them come across the southern border. A lot of them fly into the country, overstay visas. That's where it's where Canadian illegal immigration, where people come down here to work or hang out or get, they're in a relationship or they go to college or whatever, and then they stick around past their visa. That still qualifies as illegal immigration. But this isn't a line clearly at the Canadian border, as far as anybody thinks. You could tell because there's no snow. I do appreciate that they come in single file. That is nice of them. You're right. Absolutely. Paul, that's true. So this, migrants and Eagle Pass in 2026, or 2023 rather. Gabriel Cardenas took the picture, and then these guys wrote the article. Albert Sun did the graphics. David Leinhart did the. Let's see what else he writes. Senior writer at the New York Times, who runs The Morning, our flagship daily newspaper. Icon journalist, advisor in learning, background work at the Times. Blah blah blah. Is there other articles that he's written? That's his contact. These are featured stuff. Longer commute sure lies the cost of not investing in America. Latest recent immigration surge has been the largest in history. That's his thing. Iran's very bad year. We explain countries annus horribilis, what's happening in Syria. Bird flu explained. Barack Obama's big lesson. Wishful thinking on abortion politics. Democrats who won. Day after the election. We're covering how Trump won and more from them. President Trump again. It's election day, guide to election night, 2024 site, the race for Congress, Trump's hostility to democracy, book explains 2024 campaign. I don't know if this is all him or this is just a stack of stuff that he contributed on to. Because the text is too big because I'm showing it to you guys and it's brand new. But the faster pace of arrivals, including the peak of LSI. Okay, can I just do one thing before we move on to the rest of this horse shit? Let's see. Okay. Let's go to the recidivism conversation. So this is from factcheck.org, breaking down the immigration figures. Encounters on the southern border of those. Here, let me try to blow this up so you guys can see it. Encounters on the southern border for those trying to enter the U.S. without authorization have gone up significantly under President Joe Biden. Government statistics show that in the initial processing of millions of encounters, 2.5 million people have been released into the U.S. and 2.8 million have been removed or expelled. Yes, you can read that number. You heard that right. Government statistics show, and this is February of 2024, when they're writing this. 2.5 million people have been released into the U.S. and 2.8 million have been removed or expelled. Did you see the lack of counting of for the year or whatever in the people who've been expelled versus the number that came in? Now, are they the same people? Maybe not. Maybe some asylum seekers took the part, the place of people who were here illegally from before. 2.5 million have been released into the U.S. 2.8 million have been removed or expelled. 2.5 million people have been released into the U.S. and 2.8 million have been removed or expelled. Some Republicans, however, have misleadingly suggested the number released into the country since Biden took office is much higher. Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley suggested we have to send them back. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said this. Tom Cotton said that Biden has allowed an invasion to occur at our border. Almost 10 million migrants have crossed into our country. I guess 8 is almost 10 if you count legal immigrants. And also migrants have crossed into our country. I guess that counts you getting off an airplane, right? Yeah, because of Title 42. Same day on CNN State of the Union, Rubio said 3.3 million people have been released into the country who arrived here illegally. But he also claimed Biden had a policy of releasing virtually 85 to 90% of any migrant that crossed the border, a percentage that would translate to to far more than 3.3 million. Other Republicans have said 85% of migrants crossing illegally have been released, figure that reportedly, according to Border Patrol Union, was used by Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas in early January. The 85% figure is close to accurate for apprehensions by the Border Patrol for 1 month, December. But statistics for other months of Biden's term in office are much lower, as we'll explain later, because winter and because physical conditions, and also the 85% of a smaller number because they can process them versus 100% of 2 is smaller than 10% of 1,000. Okay, so 85% versus 10%. You see what I mean? DHS has released several spreadsheets of data on illegal immigration at the southern border. All of the figures in this story come from that data from the Office of Homeland Security Statistics, unless otherwise noted. Statistics can be confusing and a little messy. For one, the number of apprehensions at the border includes people who have tried to cross more than once. In fiscal year 2021, the recidivism rate was 27%, according to the most recent figures from U.S. Customs and Border Protection. That's up from 7% in 2019, which was prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. During the pandemic, the U.S. used Title 42, a public health law, to immediately expel border crossers, but without any criminal consequences, a policy that likely incentivized repeat attempts to enter the country. This is what I've been talking about the whole time. Okay. Biden stopped the use of Title 42 in May when the federal public health emergency for COVID-19 ended. And since then, the recidivism rate has dropped. It was 11% in August. Another issue with the DHS data is that the immigration cases can take years to make their way through court backlogs. The figures on what happens when migrants have come to the border reflect initial dispositions, as DHS calls them. In many cases, the final decision on whether a migrant will be allowed to stay or will be deported comes later. The information does not necessarily reflect the final disposition or removals in all cases. As a matter of fact, a bunch of them get punked right out. And they supersede it, just like, you seem healthy, you're alone, you're male, fuck off. That's how it happens most of the time. That is how, by the way, the Obama administration kicked out a bunch of people. The idea of how many people have been released in the country or how many have been removed, it's hard to know for sure because of the initial dispositions. Colleen Putzel-Kavanaugh, an associate policy analyst at the Migration Policy Institute, I've cited their statistics before. Am I losing you guys, or do you understand the point I am trying to make? I hope you are appreciating the depth of the conversation here, because I don't think you'll find it elsewhere. Like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show, etc. Okay. Comprehensive figures are available through October, so to keep things as simple as possible, we'll present numbers for February 2021, the month after Biden took office, through October, unless otherwise noted. DHS data shows 6.5 million encounters at the U.S.-Mexico border in that time frame, a figure that includes both the 5.8 million apprehensions between legal ports of entry. Again, these are there are about 1 million people, I guess, who are encountered, but they also show up illegally at the actual entrance trying to get in. Okay. Let's see. There were 2 million people who appeared at immigration court. 2.5 million people, of those 6.5 million encounters by CBP, 2.5 million people have been released into the U.S. with notices to appear in immigration court or report to Immigration Customs Enforcement in the future for other classifications, such as parole. Certain others who have crossed the border by evading the authorities, they estimate there was 660,000 gotaways or unlawful entries in fiscal 2021. The agency would not provide any updated estimate. However, a DHS spokesman told us, under the administration, the estimated annual apprehension rate on average was 78%, identical to the rate of the prior administration. That rate would support a gotaway figure of about 1.6 million from February 2021 through October. The 1.6 million figure would bring the number of those entering or released into the country to about 4.2 million. The figures used by Haley, DeSantis, and Cotton, and that's why the 2.8 didn't create a net positive, or net negative rather, sorry. The figures used by Haley, DeSantis, 8 million or 10, are totals of all migrant encounters at the border, plus gotaways, and in Cotton's case, encounters at the northern border, coastal borders, and airports. Cotton's press secretary, Patrick McCann, told us the figures showed the senator was correct to say the number crossed into the country. And this is how they get you, folks. This is how they get you. But these claims ignore the DHS statistics show 2.8 million of the encounters at the southern border alone resulted in a removal or expulsion directly from CBP custody. And all the rest of the migrants encountered are not simply released. Most of the removals, nearly 2.5 million, were immediate expulsion under Title 42. And then they tried again, and they tried again, and they tried again. Hal never said illegally here is not a problem, check your ears. Yeah. I also don't, like the whole, no human being is illegal is a weird thing to hang on. It's a matter of jargon. It has nothing to do with the reality to the situation. And you can illegally migrate into a country. Do it in any other country. They'll call you the same thing. And again, in China, they call you Waigroren, which means outsider. They don't even say foreigner, which just means different. And simmer the fuck down. That's, again, if you're here illegally, you're here illegally. That does not make you less of a human being in that case. Unless, of course, you're one of those people who thinks that anybody who's committed a misdemeanor is somehow less of a human being. I don't immediately go there, and I think that's where people overreact to that phrase. Just saying. Unimportant, weird thing to hang on, jargon issue, not important to the conversation, doesn't solve the problem for them, doesn't move the ball down the field, doesn't end up with a full and abiding conversation. Does that make sense? Everybody okay? Except the ones that hate me for saying that? Okay. Now, the majority of all individuals encountered in the southwest border over the past 3 years have been removed, returned, or expelled. A DHS official told us the total DHS repatriations of 3.7 million would support that. The figure is 57% of the 6.5 million total encounters. The one caveat is the total repatriations could include some migrants who were apprehended crossing the border some time ago and later were arrested and removed by ICE. That's right, because they're, it's still ongoing. They still look for people who are busted doing, criminal activity who are also put out, right? Okay. Yes. We'll explain what happens when migrants arrive at the border and provide information on these statistics. So just letting you know. The recidivism rate is 27% for the first 2 years, three years practically, cuts in half and still exists because I guess people didn't get the fucking memo until this year. Just letting you know.
So when you look a little deeper, that the U.S. foreign
Jesus Christ, do I have to speed this guy up? I feel like I'm talking so fast.
born population has increased to over 15%, the highest ever on
Yeah, but if you didn't have legal immigration, it would be lower. And
record.
And it's an estimate. You can actually, the foreign-born Americans would and technically should only, count. It's a New York Times article that was just released. But the other one was just a fact check on the recidivism rate from factcheck.org.
As well. And interestingly, I'll leave you with this. They went through a section where they say, well, what may have caused this? They write the welcoming immigration policy during Biden's first 3 years in office as the primary cause of the border crisis. Guys?
Guys, try to say Of course, they don't count recidivism in that at all. They go by sheer numbers, and still the admission, even in that article, if they were citing it, if you want to take them at their word, is still a quarter, less than a quarter of what Trump says have entered the country. For the record, of illegal immigrants. What's the number you hear from Trump? Probably 15, 20 million, probably 20 million, probably more by the time I get in there, probably 20 million, right? 20 million. That's the number he keeps saying. And they're here and they just get to walk around. They get released into the country. And here's Fox News citing a New York Times article, which I would argue is weighted in the wrong direction. But even if you give it to them, it's still 4.8 million people in total. Net illegal immigration coming into the country during the last 4 years. 4.8 million people. 60% of the immigration numbers in the 8 million that they said comes through are about there. So for the maggots and trolls out there, all we have to do is agree on one thing, and I think we're on the same page. Is 4.8 million lower than 20 million? I'll give you some time. I know it'll, you know what? Use ChatGPT. It'll work out. It's not great with math, but it's better than you are. So that said, where are we? Yeah, ta-da. That's right. They use Trump math, so they just multiply everything by a bazillion.